Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Chasing Psychological Safety. Hopefully, you can see this video. This video is attached to a newsletter, and we have had some issues with LinkedIn and newsletters over the last week. Apparently not the Chasing Psychological Safety newsletter, though, so hopefully you're going to be able to see it. So today we're talking about a topic that we've touched on many times before. We can't be talking about teams and high-performing teams without talking about the leaders, obviously. So today's topic, again, is about servant leadership, this magical two words that we hear so much about, and yet we are so far from having put in place the way we would like it to, at least. As we said in yesterday's article, this is a topic that's been current for the last 10-15 years, but never has it been more urgent than it is today, in particular when we're going towards this new type of work, this new understanding of what work is, and moving so much closer to agile than we have ever been before. It's obviously the time to kind of brush up on all the remaining to-dos in order to truly accomplish a transformation from command and control to servant leadership. And the two main things that we say to leaders are, number one, you have to remove blockers and give people the resources they need, whether those are permission resources, whether those are people resources, money resources, whatever it is that they need, so that you then can get out of their way and then they can do their jobs. And secondly, you need to be inspiring. And then on this last one, that's a bit trickier than just give people stuff. Not that it's easy to give them stuff, but at least you know what your exact to-dos are, whereas when it comes to inspiration, that's slightly more complicated. So we had a couple of concrete pieces of advice that we wanted to walk you through today.
The first one of those really is about the fact that we understand that this is a different type of leadership for a lot of people. A lot of people have gone through degrees in business management or technical degrees that have contained almost nothing about behavioral leadership. People who have had all kinds of different good and bad role models through their careers as leaders. And we know that for lots of people out there, this is going to be a new way of doing things. Command and control might be what they've seen and what they've been taught. This is a completely different way of doing things. We extol the virtues of all the benefits, but we respect and empathize with the fact this is going to be a big change. And the first step in helping you to step into that different kind of leadership is going to be vulnerability, which is a huge part of psychological safety and also a huge part of servant leadership. So if you can turn to your fellow leaders, your peers, first of all, and say, look, I'm on this journey. I can see where I want to go. I can see the benefits, but it's hard for me and it's new for me, then that will give you some of the support network that you need. And it'll also help you take that first step into servant leadership. And then even better, if you could say it to your teams as well. They will value it, they will appreciate it, and you will be role modeling vulnerability to them by saying, I want to do things differently. I want to do it for you and with you, but I'm uncertain in this situation. Can we all do this together? And that's the name of the game with servant leadership anyway. So it all fits together and follows. So try it, being vulnerable.
Precisely. And part and parcel of what Fiona was saying is the fact that you have to have a leadership team behind you in this transition towards servant leadership. It's never been more important. And unfortunately, when it comes to command and control, the dark side of it when it comes to being in a leadership team yourself is that there was not a lot of reason to have one. So many of the teams in a leadership position will have the meetings and they will have the forums to be having the conversations, but there will be very little in the way of authentic and real dialogue and collaboration and together innovation. What there will be instead is essentially a work group, a place where people go to give status reports, a place where people go to posture sometimes and to make sure that they appear to have done well enough or better than others. Whatever it is that they're doing in those meetings is very rarely open-hearted collaboration where they're trying to help each other and solve problems in innovative ways. So it's going to be really difficult to be going towards servant leadership on your own. So if the organization truly mandates it, even if it doesn't, look around you, look at your leadership team and wonder, are we truly leaning on each other? Are we a team? Is this happening? Because if it isn't, that is your first to do and your first point of call is to reinstate that spirit of team that you must have in your leadership team. And furthermore, you need to have enough psychological safety in that leadership team that you can be vulnerable and you can be open and you can say, you know what, I put my hands up. This is a lot more difficult than I presumed. I was a lot better of a micromanager than I am of this inspiring blocker removal leader. What can we do to get better?
Absolutely. And speaking of getting better, one of the critical things that we need to do in order to be able to embrace servant leadership is to look after ourselves. So burnout is absolutely an issue on the agenda for lots of leaders, teams, and organizations at the moment. There is no shame in saying, I am tired, I have been doing too many hours, I have been so intent on caring for the people in my team and so intent on caring for my workload that I have sacrificed myself to that. And one of the important things to remember here is some people will say you have to look after yourself in order to be able to look after other people. Servant leadership isn't about looking after other people in the traditional sense, as in you doing things for them and taking care of their needs. It's about you removing blockers, creating the space, creating the environment and the conditions for that team to be able to thrive and feel fully empowered to be able to share the load with you. So standing up and saying, I'm not in a great place right now, I feel the symptoms of burnout coming or they've arrived, is going to be a brave thing for you and a brave thing for the team to do, but also really, really important because you cannot be a true servant leader if you're not looking after yourself, first of all.
Very, very true. And one of the things that will stop you from doing exactly that is this sense of insidious impression management, if you wish. Again, for those of you who haven't heard us talk about it a million times before, impression management is the dark side of psychological safety, the negative behavior in which we are afraid of looking a certain way to our peers and to the people in the team. And that those fears are, we're afraid of looking incompetent, we're afraid of looking negative, we're afraid of looking ignorant, and we're afraid of looking disruptive. And in the case of leaders, I would say that there's another type of impression management at play. And it's, if you wish, the fear of not appearing managerial enough, of not appearing leadery enough, of not being the type of commander that your troops are waiting for. So that fear comes from what we believe is the collection of characteristics that a leader would have, comes from what we define in our head as success factors for being a good leader. And so if we have this image that we're trying to project, then we're going to be afraid of showing up for our team and not showing this particular image. And if you deconstruct that fear, it's a little bit of fearing looking incompetent. It's a little bit of fearing looking negative in front of your people when you're trying to be the positive one that leads. It's a little bit of fear of looking incompetent in terms of being a good leader. So it still goes back to the main elements of impression management, but altogether it gives you this impression of what you should look like as a leader, and then you're fearing not looking that way. The good news with servant leadership is that you can put all of that image aside. No one has the blueprint of what it is like to be a servant leader other than you're someone who helps them. Literally, that is the only prerequisite of being a good servant leader, is that you are helpful. So from that perspective, you don't need to fear looking a certain way anymore. So you can kind of catch yourself when I haven't said something because I didn't want to be demoralizing, or I haven't opened my mouth because I didn't want to be the one that's against something that they've just gotten into their heads that they can do. So walk away from your image of existing what is a good leader and walk into just be helpful. And then you'll be able to kind of catch yourself against the impression management of looking unleadery. Right, that's
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us this week. And if you are working on your servant leadership and your psychological safety, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll see you all again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.